Welcome to Box Next, our video series where we host executives and industry leaders to discuss what is trending in the market. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of artificial intelligence and the impact on organizations of all kinds and sizes. I'm David Leeb, Chief Legal Officer here at Box, and I'm thrilled to welcome my colleague and friend, Leah Perry, Box's Chief Privacy Officer and Global Head of Public Policy. Leah has been instrumental in driving our approach to AI governance and policies here at Box. Leah, thanks very much for joining us today. Would you perhaps mind sharing a little bit about your background with the audience?
Sure, happy to do so. So David, I have over 20 years of experience practicing law in the public and private sector. In doing so, I have worked on anywhere from information security law, privacy law, regulatory matters, public policy, and international trade matters. Within that is about 10 years of experience working as Chief Investigative Counsel and Chief Oversight Counsel with committees in the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. I also possess experience in the private sector, leading privacy and information security law programs, as well as public policy programs in the financial services, health technology, social media, and SaaS industries. As Chief Privacy Officer, I am charged with overseeing the privacy legal and privacy compliance function. This means that I am overseeing privacy requirements that apply to our product design, our policies, as well as our third-party service providers, both internally and externally. At Box, privacy is at the very foundation of what we do. And so I'm proud to say that we maintain some of the highest certifications in privacy and data protection. Even further, as Global Head of Public Policy, I oversee and implement the strategic vision of all of the policies, proposed regulations, and guidance across the globe that could impact Box, our customers, and our service providers.
Terrific background, Leah. There's a good reason why we hired you. So before we jump into the regulatory side, maybe we could just take a step back and talk about sort of the history of AI. While AI has captured the world's attention in the last year or so with the launch of ChatGPT and other large language models, AI has actually been around with us since dating back to the 1950s even, right? So we've got a really long history here. Back in the 50s, we had the very first neural network models. And since then, we've had decades and decades of innovation. AI impacts all aspects of our lives, and it's become more sophisticated and more integrated than ever before. We have things like personal assistants in our smart devices. We've got fraud detection prevention automatically running in the background in our credit cards. So given all this, I'm just curious, with AI being all around us, why is it that governments are just now starting to take notice and start to focus on legislation and regulation?
Well, David, you're exactly right. AI has been with us for over 70 years. But, however, what we saw over the last year has been a proliferation of usage of generative AI technology across nearly every sector. And so the difference between traditional AI versus generative AI is this. Generative AI is powered by large language models. It utilizes advanced machine learning in order to learn and analyze over large amounts of data and therefore generate and learn from, even further, generate new content. And so where we are right now is that regulators, as a result of this quick adoption of generative AI impacting nearly any industry, is that regulators are taking a close look at it. That means that over 69 countries and territories have considered and proposed legislation impacting AI. They're particularly focused on some of the high-risk use cases or prohibited use cases that could impact one's financial condition, healthcare benefits, and employment. So that's why you see the proliferation of AI proposals and That's specifically why it's so different than what we have seen in the last 70 years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, we've seen a recent report from the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that says that there are over 800 pieces of policy and legislation being considered right now across those 69 countries you mentioned. So it is coming, and it's coming in a big wave in terms of regulation. So given all of this activity we're seeing on the regulatory front, how should businesses, nonprofits, how should public sector entities, how should they go about preparing themselves, and how will they be impacted by the new legislation?
You've said it exactly right. There has been a number of legislative proposals across the globe, whether or not you're talking about the EU AI Act, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer in the United States Congress, particularly the U.S. Senate, his own AI Insight Forums, or the Biden administration, U.S. President Biden and his administration, providing all types of proposals, whether or not it's the AI Bill of Rights or joint statements made by agencies as far as their own enforcement of potential unethical usage. Then you also have individual U.S. states that have made proposals around AI legislation, such as what you find in California or elsewhere. But regardless, the commonality is that regulators, government bodies are trying to protect their citizenry from risk associated with AI. And so when you take a hard look at this, you want to always keep in mind, what are the common trends that you're seeing, common threads? So there's basically three areas. There's one, regulating, modeling, and training that foundational data in terms of how that foundational data and the modeling and training can ultimately lead to bias, hallucinations, etc. Number two, you also find a common trend as far as seeking to regulate high-risk use cases or prohibited use cases, such as things that could impact your healthcare, your employment, financial decisions, even law enforcement. And so because of that, you see those type of things, for instance, in the EU AI Act. This is a legislation that's been in the works for over 3 years. And back in June of 2023, it actually passed the European Parliament. Currently, that legislation is in trilogue, it's under discussion, and it's expected to actually be finished and come into effect, likely sometime in April of next year. And then the last thing that you also see is this call to action around AI governance. A call to action whether or not you are a creator of AI, so you're the developer, you're an intermediary of AI technology like Box, where you're integrating with an AI service provider as far as your product offering, or, for instance, you're one of our customers, so a business enterprise or a nonprofit or a public sector public sector entity that is choosing to deploy it. And so that message of AI governance to mitigate those risks identified is something that you see repeatedly throughout various pieces of legislative proposals.
So Leah, given how dynamic the regulatory landscape is, how quickly AI is evolving on the technology front, what can organizations do to prepare themselves going forward and be ready for kind of the new dawn of AI?
I think that is a great question, David. And I think every organization, whether or not you're in the public or private sector, needs to take a hard look, even if, for instance, their role is as a creator of AI technology, or they're an intermediary like Box, meaning that they're choosing to integrate their product offering with an AI service provider, or they are a customer of Box, so they are choosing to deploy it. Here's the thing, they need to take a close look at 4 key areas. The first area is to take a moment, take the time to review the National Institute on Standards and Technology, NIST. This is the AI risk management framework and the correlating playbooks, as well as the roadmap that helps to guide the conversations within your companies, within your nonprofit, or even if your entity is in the public sector. Regardless, this will provide you with the foundation to have conversations around ultimately what are the mapping, measuring, risk mitigation efforts that you should have in place, as well as will speak to potentially what your AI governance body will look like. Number two, the other thing that needs to happen is having a detailed conversation with cross-functional stakeholders across your organization. That means that these discussions will be focused on what are the potential use cases, what are the prohibited use cases, and even further, what are the policies, procedures, both internally and externally, that these items should adhere to. Those use cases will also assist in the selection of an AI service provider, and then even further speak to AI governance and what your program will look like. Number three, the other item is service providers, AI service providers. I'd encourage every organization that is either integrating with an AI service provider or there are a business enterprise customer choosing to deploy it, for instance, to make sure that they have a meaningful due diligence process around the AI service providers that they're considering. Further, that includes technical enablement, technical measures, such as how the data is being processed, where is it being stored, and exactly what is the level of access that the AI service provider will have to that content. What are the security measures in place? Encryption at rest, encryption at transit. And then lastly, and most importantly from a service provider lens, what are the contractual provisions that you have in place in order to safeguard your data and to ensure compliance with legal standards and norms? And then number four is a message point that I've brought to surface several times throughout the discussion, which is AI governance. AI governance dictates how you map, measure, and mitigate risk throughout the company as you continue to use AI. Now, the policies and procedures that are drawn from AI governance should not only speak to what you do with AI technology, but further be drawn from learnings, valued input from stakeholders across your organization, including escalation to executive leadership. So AI governance should be at the heart of the entire AI development or product lifecycle. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Leah. I always come away from our conversations feeling so much smarter. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for a very enlightening discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
So, as you've heard, with continued innovation in AI technology comes increased scrutiny and regulatory focus from governments worldwide. It is very important for organizations to stay informed about evolving policies and regulations. By proactively preparing for potential action, businesses can navigate this changing landscape effectively while safeguarding themselves and paving the way for future AI adoption. And that wraps up another insightful session of our Box Next video series. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussions about AI and other emerging topics. Until next time, keep looking out for what's next.